Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about how Kamala Harris is in striking distance, just 1% away, even less, to winning all 7 battleground states in the 2024 election. A complete rejection of everything we have heard about this being a dead heat, about it being a toss-up race. As you can see in my forecast right now, this is what you're looking at, is my current forecast. I have Harris carrying the blue wall, as well as Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. The only one of the 7 battleground states that she's losing is North Carolina. This means that she is exactly matching Joe Biden's 2020 victory map, of course, in the last election, where he won 306 to 232. Now, after the census, with a little bit of a change in terms of how many votes each state has, she wins 303 to 235. Not so much of a close election at all. So again, right now, I have 6 of the 7 battleground states going to her. But I'm not confident. I can't pinpoint things by half a point. Right now, as you can see in the actual margins of each state, I have 4 states under below 1%. Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona. Harris wins 3 of them, or all 3 of those that I just said, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. The only one that Donald Trump wins is the state of North Carolina. I currently have it a 0.5% margin there in North Carolina. And really, the only reason is because of the substantial margin he won it by in the last election. 1.3% is not nothing. I'd be much more confident. Despite the nationalization that we have seen, by the Democrats, right? Making North Carolina a key race, right? A nationalized race. Despite that, I would still feel more confident if I was a Democrat, if I was, within the Harris campaign, in their chances in Georgia, because Georgia did go to Biden and North Carolina went to Trump. That's a 1.5% just in these 2 states. That's a 1.5% difference, between the margins of how these both of these states voted in 2020, and in a very close election, something like that does in fact matter. But still, of course, she should take 6 of the 7 battleground states. But it's insane to think that Harris is now within striking distance of carrying North Carolina. And this is not, something that we have thought for a while now. When you look, predict she has really made. What I'm trying to say is that she has really made a comeback in these final a few days or a week or so leading up to the election. You can actually see I never bring up betting markets for a reason, because they're useless. But in this case, it actually is sort of useful to grasp how this race has changed just in the public perception as well. You can see that Kamala Harris is now favored to win in the predicted market. As you can see in this graph does not go a while back. This goes back to October 26th. This was just this was just 7 days ago. This was 1 week ago, where Trump was at 62 cents, a 62% chance to win. Harris was only at 43. That was, almost basically, yeah, a 19-point margin, basically a 20-point margin in between them in terms of their chances. And today, just 1 week later, Kamala Harris has slowly climbed to the top. She now leads the election chances. This goes for Polymarket. This goes for that Kelsey app or whatever it's called. But Kamala Harris really making a comeback even in the public perception's eye in these past few days. And a major point when it comes to if Kamala Harris can carry all 7 battleground states is the polling. And just like the betting markets, I don't really bring up polling, but also in this case, it sort of proves my point. Because what you're looking at now is the polling average in the state of Arizona. Trump is ahead by 2.1%. Now, out of the 7 battleground states, Arizona is the best margin for anyone. It's the best margin for Trump, and and Kamala Harris doesn't have a margin of higher than 2.1%. Arizona is the highest margin for any candidate of the 7 battlegrounds. Georgia is about a 1 point margin. North Carolina right now is a 1 point margin. Michigan is about a 1 point margin. Wisconsin is about a 1 point margin. Nevada is just about even, but Trump has a very small lead. And Pennsylvania is like Trump plus zero point 0.1 or something. It's literally dead even. It's a dead heat there. So it's insane to think. We are so, we are so 2024 election pilled, is what I say, because we are acting like 2.1% is a lot. Let's just look back at whatever. We can look back, whatever, even the 2022 midterms, when you look at the Senate average. Mark Kelly was only expected to win by 1.5% on election day on average. He ended up winning by 4.9%, 5%. They underestimated him by 3.5%. So 2% is not anything major at all. I mean, I am close to thinking about all of these polls as a 50-50 race, right, in the general election. Now, I have my own thoughts based on other factors who's leading, but based off the polls, I think of it as no more than a 50-50 race. It doesn't matter if Harris is ahead by a point here. It doesn't matter if Trump is ahead by a point here. 2.1% is not a lot at all. It's really, stunning and really unusual that in any race, polling, the common consensus with polling is such a tight race. Polls very rarely, frequently, you know, agree basically that a race is so tight as they do in this presidential race. So the point is, Trump's best lead is 2.1% in Arizona. But there are so many factors to indicate that he is being underestimated. I mean, just look at, I'm sorry, that he's being overestimated. Harris is being underestimated. For a minute, just look at this gender gap among early voters in the swing states. You can see that across the board, across all 7 battlegrounds, early voters are predominantly women. Arizona, it's a 6 point margin. Pennsylvania and Georgia, it's a 12 point margin. That's insane. And ask yourself, why would women just randomly be voting, more frequently early than on election day compared to men? There's not a reason. It's because women are more enthusiastic to vote about this election. They care about this election. They're turning out in early voting, and if these numbers at all replicate what it looks like on election day, it will be a Harris blowout. Obviously, women are breaking heavily for Kamala Harris right now. That is a fact. She's winning them by 10 points, 14 points, 12 points, in many in various polls. So women are turning out in this election. And not only that, there are, clear indicators that there are, demographics that are first time voters. I mean, just take a look here from reporting from CBS. Look at this increase in voter registration. Now, this was in July. This was the start of the Harris campaign. So, it's very outdated, but you got the idea. I mean, the information still stands. You can see that this is the week of July 21st, 2020, compared to the week of July 21st in 2024. Same time period from 2020 to 2024. You can see the increase in voter registration among young women in general, up 4% when you round, almost doubling. Black Americans in general, up 86%. And there's been this, whole notion that Harris is losing African American support and they're not going to turn out for her. But look at that. Black Americans as a whole, not even just women, not, any more specific demographic, up 86%, almost doubling compared to 2020. Black women in particular, basically doubling from 2020. Young Latinas, hugely important in Arizona and Nevada, up 150%, doubling and a half. That's incredible. And then the most stunning of all, young black women, up a staggering 176% compared to the same time period last year. That it's almost unbelievable, right? It really is. It is almost unbelievable. So the point is, these are first time voters, right? If they're registering to vote this year, it's to vote in the upcoming election. And first time voters are notoriously difficult to poll. That's why Trump was able to win in 2016, is because you had a surge of young white men, vote for the first time. And that was really underrepresented in polling. It is simply hard to capture these first time voters. Obviously, I mean, this is just logic. It's easier to capture voters who consistently turn out, right? In areas that consistently turn out. But it's harder to capture these first time voters. When you look at these demographics, young black women, young Latinos, young people in general, but also racial minorities, who are they going to break heavily towards? Kamala Harris, obviously. So, Kamala Harris, there is all the reason for Kamala Harris to be underestimated in polling and not so much this time around. You've got a lot of secret Kamala voters as well, just like that same effect in 2016 with the secret Trump voter, right? They didn't want to admit it, but they were going into the ballot box to vote for Donald Trump, but they didn't want to admit that to pollsters. There is not really the reason for that same effect in 2024. People are openly for Trump, right? It's his third time running. He was leading most of the race. No one it would be embarrassed to say that they're voting for the candidate who, is leading, right? Who is leading for most of the race. While Kamala, yes, there is the reason for a shy Kamala voter. A lot of women and a lot of Republicans would not like to or can't even stomach the thought of Trump being president again. And that is being that is shown through this sort of data. And again, all the reason for hidden Kamala vote, not so much for Donald Trump. So when you look at the margins from 2020, you look at the blue wall, you look at the Sun Belt states, Biden carried Arizona and Georgia. It all comes down to, if Kamala Harris can hold these margins, if she could keep it relatively stagnant. And everything I've seen so far indicates just that. When you look at early voting, specifically in Georgia, people are voting where Democrats need them to. And early voting is surging, in Georgia. It's already more than it was in 2020, and we've still got a few days, left in this election. And of course, 2020 was famously an extremely high turnout election. It looks like in many states, turnout will break, or will, be more than it was in 2020, which was not something that we expected not too long ago. So, all the signs are pointing towards a very solid Kamala victory. So the question becomes if she can hold these margins that Biden won it by. And as you can see in my forecast, I think she does in Wisconsin. I think she does in Michigan, Pennsylvania. I think she actually expands on Biden's margin. Nevada, she holds. Arizona and Georgia remain incredibly close, but she is favored in both those states. So then you come to North Carolina, and as I brought up at the beginning of the video, Trump won it by 1.3% in 2020. Now again, that is significant. That's not some 50-50 race, right? That where he won it by only like 0.1% or zero point 0.2. No, 1.3% is significant. However, as you can see in my forecast, look at this column here, shift from 2020, right? As you'd expect, the vast majority of states are becoming more Republican, but it's very marginal, right? Kentucky only 0.2, Oklahoma only 0.8, North Dakota only 0.3. It's extremely marginal. But one of the few states where Democrats actually gain their margin from 2020, gain on their margin, is North Carolina, 0.4% raise. And that is because they were putting a lot of time and energy into flipping North Carolina. Joe Biden, he came close in 2020, but this was not, a state that he focused on as much as Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin or Georgia. And that proved to be consequential. However, the roles are different now. Kamala Harris really is putting a lot of time, a lot of efforts, doing so many rallies in North Carolina, but so is Donald Trump. And that's when you know things aren't going good for him. He is trying to defend the state of North Carolina. I mean, just viciously trying to defend this red territory. If you look at his schedule in these past days, not the past days, these last couple of days until election day, he is holding so many rallies in North Carolina, completely skipping out on other states like Wisconsin and I think Nevada as well. North Carolina, he is trying to defend, and that's not good. However, um, it probably means that, he is also focusing a lot on holding North Carolina. Not a good look for the campaign, but of course, obviously, logically, it does help him in North Carolina. I'm not ready to put North Carolina as tilt blue. We have a major poll coming out of Iowa that gets the result spot on every single time. So that really gives us a grasp on how this race is going, and I'll make my final prediction tomorrow. But as of now, I don't think that North Carolina goes blue. But look at my forecast, 0.5% margin. Can I be that spot on? Probably not. Maybe. We'll see. But I'm probably not. North Carolina I could very easily be off a point in North Carolina, and boom, Harris wins the election. It's 319 to 219, and the race isn't even that close. So the point is, Harris well within striking distance of carrying all 7 battleground states. Who could have expected this? So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe down below. That helps out a lot. If you enjoyed, drop a comment to let me hear your thoughts on this topic, and I will see you all later.